Ex, 27 male, expecting a baby with girl, 19 female, he cheated on me, 27 female, with ugh. I'll start by noting that I'm not sure why I'm sharing this, but I feel compelled to do so. I ended my relationship with my boyfriend in June of last year after discovering that he had cheated on me with yet another female, out of numerous. A common buddy revealed to me that he had been with another mutual friend for over a year. I'm embarrassed to confess that I didn't even leave then and then, but instead told him I was going to stay at my mother's for a few weeks to get some distance and think about things. He wasted little time in those few weeks and began sleeping with his works, then 18-year-old secretary cliché, I know. I discovered her belongings in our apartment, including personal photos and movies. I broke up with him officially at the time, but I considered it cheating since I hadn't actually left him and was still thinking things through. He taunted me about sleeping with this girl for a few weeks while I was waiting to move out of the flat, and the girl in question even started harassing me. He gave her my number, now blocked, and she would repeatedly call me and threaten me to keep her name out of my mouth or else, taunt me about being jealous of her and so on. Everything was really upsetting. I should also mention that my ex was abusive for the majority of our relationship. He threatened suicide on multiple occasions when I tried to leave, threatened to tell all his friends and family that I abused him. I'm a quiet, tiny, assuming girl who wouldn't hurt a fly, almost to a fault. When I found out about I tried to grab his phone, and he choked me to the point where I feared for my left, and grabbed my arm so forcefully he left bruises. He attempted to have me fired by sending my supervisor an email about how I slandered him. Everything was a nightmare. I used to love him. I no longer do, but I recently found out on social media that he is having a child with the now 19-year-old girl. She's fairly far along, so they must have conceived just a few months after I left. Is it strange that I'm sad? We used to discuss starting a family. Obviously, he would be a horrible person with whom to create a family, but I'm nevertheless taken aback by this news and it hurts. Is this strange? Story 2. I'm struggling with my wife's infertility. I realize this is going to be a lengthy one, but it's about my wife and I's infertility battle. My wife and I met in the manner of a corny love novel. I followed my ex-girlfriend because I suspected she was cheating on me. Until I first got at that flat, I could plainly hear them having and was dealing with that when a beautiful woman came on the top level. I was sitting close to the door of her boyfriend's apartment when she inquired what I was doing there. I instructed her to take a seat and just listen. She heard them and came over to sit near me. We remained until they both exited the apartment. We didn't say anything and simply left, her boyfriend following us. I barred him from entering the elevator, and she and I walked to a neighboring club. We slept together that night but had no or kissed. We just slept and parted ways the following day. We didn't see one other for the following 3 months till I happened to run into her and decided to chat to her. We exchanged phone numbers, and the rest is history. It's been 9 years since then. We married 6 years ago and began trying for a child a year afterwards. After a few months of trying, I began to have doubts, so we went to see a doctor. So we began following an ovulation schedule, thinking we'd simply been unlucky. It still didn't happen, so I counted my swimmers, and according to the doctor, I had a bountiful number of swimmers. Then my wife was tested, and we discovered that the chances of her becoming pregnant are 1 in a million. I didn't blame her since it wasn't her fault. We attempted IUI and IVF. However, none of them worked. We ended up taking out a second mortgage to give it one more go, but it also failed. This all transpired over a 3-year period, and finally we stopped trying and simply let it unfold organically. Every month when my wife's period arrived, she was upset, and all I could do was attempt to soothe her. But I couldn't comfort her since she blames herself much too much. We looked into adoption, but since I had a criminal record, since I was 18, we were always refused because we were one of 1,000 couples trying to be authorized. S was no longer spontaneous. She was constantly keeping track of her ovulation cycle. I began to feel ugly, as if she was merely having for the sake of having. She didn't start it, and she wasn't having fun. It was as if I were having with a corpse. Then there was a 2-month hiatus from intercourse. There are none. That was the last straw. I was intoxicated when I got home, which never happens. It's because my sister recently had her second kid. My sister said this to me while holding my infant niece. Why haven't you had any children yet if you'd be such a fantastic father? I'm sure you want them. She is unaware of the difficulties. So I excused myself and went to the pub with my colleagues to get plastered. When I got home, I initiated, and my wife didn't appear to like it. She even inquired about the date. I could imagine her doing the math and then being disappointed when she discovered she was 5 days beyond her ovulation. I came to a halt and naively blurted, "Could you pretend to like it for a change?" I get the sensation that I am having with a brick wall. I instantly regretted it as soon as it left my lips. She yelled at me to get off her. I feel like a bad person, but I can't keep doing this. I'm feeling unsightly and undesired. We used to have every day, sometimes twice a day, with her having fun and initiating. I've considered divorce since I haven't been pleased in a long period. I feel as though I'm squandering both of our time, but I'm still in love with her. I've always heard that marriages fail because the love is no longer there, but I know for a fact that we still adore one another. My wife is terrified of, because she knows we can't have in public. She remains her handsy-loving self, and when we don't have, she isn't surprised when her period arrives because she expects it. When the blood comes, there is no hope left. So, sure, Reddit, I'm in a bad mood. You don't have to tell me I'm a bad person for seeking a divorce, since she has no control over the situation. While it is also my responsibility that I do not have children. With her infertility, she doesn't have an option. However, we are disqualified for adoption owing to a decision I made as a teenager, and although I see it was a mistake, it was still a choice I deliberately took. Edit. A lot of people have urged me to simply be honest and tell her what I've stated here. I want children, but more importantly, I want her. I don't only want children. I want them to be with her. Maybe it's time I told her. Perhaps it's time to just inform her that we shouldn't have children. We may continue to attempt for adoption, but it should not rule our life. Update. So first and foremost, I'd want to express my gratitude for the advice I received in response to my last article. It's just been a week, but I'm excited to share the news. We're expecting a child. My wife is 6 weeks pregnant, yet she still bled on her last period. I'm not sure how that's possible, but I'm not going to question it. My wife had to go to the doctor for a standard examination 2 days ago. They ended up taking some blood work, and she was discovered to be pregnant. I can't express how pleased we both are, and another important point is that we had for the first time, which she initiated and really liked. The difference is like night and day. She did end up sobbing later, and we spoke about the last several years. She continued apologizing, but I reassured her that what I said was a moment of weakness on my behalf, and that I should never have spoken what I did. She's almost back to the lady I married. Clearly, the years of stress have left their effects on her. She still tears a lot, but she thinks it's hormones on top of the joyful news on top of years of emotional pain. The pregnancy seems to be healthy, according to the gynecologist, although it is too early to tell. However, my little girl/boy has a heartbeat. This is indeed a dream come true. We'll wait a bit before announcing the news, and once the baby is born, we'll explain the infertility challenges we had. We're not sure how we'll approach the matter, since no one knew about our troubles, which is why my sister and mother made such hurtful remarks. We were constantly frightened of being judged. My mother is a pretty judgmental person, and I was concerned she would blame my wife for not having given me a kid, which is ludicrous, but it's my mother. But I'd also want to mention that some people accused me of plagiarizing my narrative from Colleen Hoover's All Your Perfects, and to be honest, it did appear remarkably similar, but guess what? Our story had a happy conclusion. Miracles, I suppose, do exist, and I feel like I've won the lottery 10 times in a row. So to summarize, I'm a happy camper who will be the most fantastic father the world has ever seen. Suck on that Mother Nature. Another amusing point is that my wife has begun dancing in the kitchen once again. When I stepped into the kitchen yesterday, she was dancing to Girl from Antioch. By the way, I highly recommend the song. The lyrics were also spot on. I'm not sure where I belong, but I belong to you. Sounds a little possessive, but it seemed appropriate that we were destined to be together. I'm not much of a believer in fate, but maybe I can make an exception for my wife and myself. Goodbye, Reddit, and I'll see you in about 7.5 months when I upload a photo of our tiny creation.